Chapter 4. A near view of the High Sierra. Early one bright morning in the middle of the Indian summer, while the glacier meadows were still crisp with frost crystals, I set out from the Mount Linnell on my way down to Yosemite Valley to replenish my exhausted store of bread and tea. I had spent the past summer, as many preceding ones, exploring the glaciers that lie on the head of the waters of the San Joaquin, Tuolumne, Merced, and Owens rivers, measuring and studying their movements, trends, crevices, moraines, etc., and the parts they had played during the period of their greater extension in the creation and development of the landscape of this alpine wonderland. This time for this kind of work was nearly over for the year, and I began to look forward with delight to the approaching winter with its wondrous storms, when I would be warmly snowbound in my Yosemite cabin with plenty of bread and books. But a tinge of regret came on when I considered that possibly I might not see this favorite region again until the next summer. Expecting distant views from the heights of about the Yosemite walls. To artists, few portions of the High Sierra are, strictly speaking, picturesque. The whole massive uplift of the range is one great picture, not clearly divisible into smaller ones, differing much in this respect from the older, and what may be called riper mountains of the Coast Range. All the landscapes of the Sierra, as we have seen, were born and again remodeled from base to summit by the developing ice floods of the last glacier winter. But all these new landscapes were not brought forth simultaneously. Some of the highest where the ice lingered longest are tens of centuries younger than those of the warmer regions below them. In general, the younger the mountain landscapes, younger I mean with reference to the time of their emergence from the ice of the glacial period, the less separable are they into artistic bits capable of being made into warm, sympathetic pictures with appreciable humanity in them. Here, however, on the headwaters of the Tuolumne, is a group of wild peaks on which the geologist may say that the sun has just begun to shine, which is yet in a high degree picturesque, and its main features so regular and evenly balanced as almost to appear conventional. One somber cluster of snow-laden peaks with gray pine-fringed granite bosses braided around its base, the whole surging free into the sun from the head of the magnificent valley, whose lofty walls are beveled away on both sides so as to embrace it all without emitting anything not strictly belonging to it. The foreground was now aflame with autumn colors, brown, purple, and gold, ripe in the mellow sunshine, contrasting brightly with the deep cobalt blue of the sky, and the black and gray and pure and spiritual white of the rocks and glaciers. Down through the mist, the young Tuolumne was seen pouring from its crystal fountains, now resting in glassy pools as if changing back again into ice, now leaping in white cascades, as if turning to snow, gliding right and left between granite bosses, then sweeping on through the smooth, meadowy levels of the valley, swaying pensively from side to side with calm, stately gestures, past dipping willows and sedges and around groves of arrowy pine, and throughout its whole eventful course, whether following fast or slow, singing loud or low, ever filling the landscape with spiritual emanations, and manifesting the grandeur of its sources in every moment and tone. Pursuing my lonely way down the valley, I turned again and again on the glorious picture, throwing up my arms to enclose it as in a frame, and long ages of growth in the darkness beneath the glaciers. Throughout sunshine and storms, it seems now to be ready and waiting for the elected artist. Like yellow wheat for the reaper, and I could not help wishing that I might carry colors and brushes with me on my travels, and learn to paint. In the meantime, I had to be content with photographs on my mind and sketches in the frozen meadows over the divide between the waters of the Merced and Tulime, and down through the forests that clothe the slopes of Cloud's Rest, arriving in Yosemite in the due time, which, with me, and any time, and, strange to say, among the first people I met here were two artists, who, with letters of introduction, were waiting my return. They inquired whether in the course of my exploration in the adjacent mountains I had ever come upon a landscape suitable for a large painting. Whereupon I began a description of the one that had so lately excited my admiration. Then, as I went further and further into details, their faces began to glow, and I offered to guide them to it, while they declared that they would gladly follow, far or near, whithersoever I could spare the time to lead them. Since storms might come breaking down the fine weather at any moment, burying the colors in snow and cutting off the artist's retreat, I advised getting ready at once. I led them out of the valley by the Vernal and Nevada Falls, thence over the main dividing ridge to the Big Tulume Meadows, by the old meadow trail, and thence along. The beauty was reflected in their faces, for me a novel and interesting study. They naturally were affected most of all by the colors. The intense azure of the sky, the purplish grays of the granite, the red and browns of dry meadows, and the translucent purple and crimson of huckleberry bogs. The flaming yellow of aspen groves, the silvery flashing of the streams, and the bright green and blue of the glacier lakes. But the general expression of the scenery, rocky and savage, seemed sadly disappointing, and as they threaded the forest from ridge to ridge, eagerly scanning the landscape as they were unfolded, they said, "All this is huge and sublime, but we see nothing as of yet at all available for effective pictures. Art is long and art is limited, you know, and here are the foregrounds, middle grounds, and backgrounds, all like bare rock waves, woods, groves, diminutive flecks of meadow, and strips of glittering water." "Never mind," I replied. "Only bide a wee, and I will show you something you will like." At length, toward the end of the second day, the Sierra Crown began to come into view, and we had barely rounded the projecting headland before mentioned. The whole picture stood revealed in the flush of the aspen glow. Their enthusiasm was excited beyond bounds, and the more diminutive of the two, a young Scotchman, dashed ahead, shouting and gesticulating and tossing his arms into the air like a madman. Here at last was a typical alpine landscape. After feasting a while on the view, I proceeded to make camp in a sheltered grove a little way back from the meadow, where pine boughs could be obtained for beds, and where there were plenty of dry wood for fire. While the artist ran here and there along the river bends and up the sides of the canyon, choosing foregrounds for sketches after dark. When our tea was made and a rousing fire had been built, we began to make our plans. They decided to remain several days, at the least, while I concluded to make an excursion in the meantime to the untouched summit of the Rider. It was about the middle of October, the springtime of snowflowers. The first winter clouds had already bloomed, and the peaks were strewn with fresh crystal, without, however, affecting the climbing to any dangerous extent. and as the weather was still profoundly calm, and the distance to the front of the mountain only a little more than a day, I felt that I was running no great risk of being stormbound. Mount Rider is king of the mountains of the middle portion of the High Sierra, as Shasta of the north and Whitney of the south section. Moreover, as far as I know, it had never been climbed. I had explored the adjacent wilderness summer and after summer, but my studies thus far had never drawn me to the top of it. Its height above sea level is about 13,300 feet, and is fenced around by steeply inclined glaciers and canyons of tremendous depth and ruggedness, which render it almost inaccessible. But difficulties of this kind only exhilarate the mountaineer.